Hey everyone, welcome to another live stream of the Rookies. I hope you're all having a wonderful Monday and everyone's keeping safe and healthy. So, as I discussed in the Discord channel, we're going to be moving over to Discord from next Monday, doing a live stream in the voice channel, which I'm super excited about because it means basically it'll be real time with you guys, and it means there's real time interaction between myself and the community of the Rookies. And we're going to be getting a bunch of other professionals along with us to have a chat and just honestly a general hangout where we just look at the latest art as we do here, but it's very much just real time and being able to answer any questions or anything that you guys may have. So, as always, on a Monday, we review the rookies stuff and then we hit contender stuff on a Thursday. The times will be changing next week as well. I yet to be confirmed, but it will be probably a lot earlier in the day than it is this week. So, without further ado, let's get started. So we got a really awesome asset here from a rookie. Looking super nice. Quality. Every time I look at the latest stuff on the rookies, the quality bar just seems to go up and up and up, which is incredible. I mean, you know, the quality of work speaks for itself, and you guys are really passionate about what it is you do. So, looking at this, I can see that there's a lot of really nice details. Like overall, this asset is presented so well, and I can see it's done in rendering in UE4, which is wonderful. I think it's always important that if you're doing anything that's related to game art, to render it out in, a game engine instead of using like Arnold in Maya, for example. But yeah, overall it's looking really good. I like the speaker grill details, like the cloth, I like all of like the kind of stamped down Baroque details on the cone area of the speaker. It's really nice. Same with the side sections. I guess I'd be curious to know if the guy who created this did all this in ZBrush or he just went with Painter Alpha after and just started painting, like stamping all this stuff in place. Overall, it looks really good. It feels really good, and it reads really well. I guess the only feedback notes I would have is sort of like, you have some really nice discoloration happening here, but I'd probably push it a little bit further in other areas. So maybe like around the top section, I kind of just have a bit more going on around these areas. Maybe just a bit more kind of edge wear around the bottom parts, around the corners, considering these would be in contact a lot with the surface itself. Probably more roughness variation value on this metal piece in the front. It can just literally be just general staining, maybe there's fingerprints, smudges, just anything that kind of breaks up just the consistent roughness value that we're seeing on this guy. You probably do the same with the knobs themselves. You can around the sides of them, you can go in and kind of just rough them up a wee bit as well and kind of just give it more love in the roughness values. Yeah, I think it'd be really cool if this guy's on. Like if this here's a light, just having it lit up, that would be like a nice little touch. And I can see that there's a lot of noise on like the area that the record gets placed onto. I would try to avoid kind of all this micro detail noise because I feel like if this asset was placed multiple times side by side or viewed from a distance, it would just be quite noisy. I usually only kind of, when it comes to stuff I create, I usually always kind of just leave a lot of the noise detail for areas that matter or like normal details that matter and just use your roughness map to kind of just add a lot of that micro detail in. And even your albedo, like for example, we can see up here, this is a really good example where we can see a lot of this dirt and smudges in the albedo and in roughness, but it's not really in the normal detail, which is good because then you're not going to get all like this kind of super noisy kind of micro detail. If I was to work in this, I'd probably apply kind of like a nice gradient. So like the outside of this. So for example, it'd be a lot darker around this part that makes contact with the other piece, and maybe just slight gradient touch around the edges here, where maybe there's just dirt gathering inside of the crevices. I think that'd be really cool. And then maybe just pull back a little bit on all this dirt and detail here. Maybe it reads more as dust, and maybe it's just a little brighter. Your roughness values are just a little a little more rough, but you're letting the roughness kind of determine that rather than the values in your albedo map. The same with the inside as well. If you're going with kind of just like a little gradient kind of, so you could darken this part here and then you could just kind of blend it out around here where it goes from like dark to bright, and then just sort of like pull back in all this kind of micro detail, just brighten it up a wee bit, and again, just let your roughness do it. Because you have to think like this material alone, like the brass would be very reflective. So a lot of variation in your roughness would really come through when the light hits it. And so I would let that do a lot of the work. Maybe there's some slight oxidation happening to the copper or the brass. So it's like you're getting kind of slight green hues and such in areas of it. Maybe you're on kind of these crevice areas. Maybe on the patterns themselves, maybe there's just slight kind of just greens coming through, and maybe a bit more rough than the actual roughness value on the other, like the material covering this whole area. Again, down here as well, I do like that there is a lot of like darker, smudgy details, but it'd be cool just to kind of see that come through a little bit more in the roughness, and then just go in and do another pass where you're kind of having some oxidation happening to like this piece here, maybe somewhere in the handles as well. Overall, it's looking really, really nice though. Like I really like the composition, the layout, the lighting, just how everything kind of just fits together in the mesh as a whole. I'd probably go in again just as a little pet peeve of mine where you go in and just maybe add just some little dust around areas that make contact, so it kind of makes just things feel like it's kind of more kind of cohesively married together rather than it just being like a part floating on top of another part floating on another top of another part. And just a little tip. But overall, looking awesome. So I guess next thing here that we have some picture frames. A few things to call out. The first would be, when it comes to kind of doing this stuff, I always would avoid kind of having like blood details on the actual albedo texture itself. I would allow like decal work in Unreal to do a lot of that for you. Not only does this mean that you can utilize these guys in more of a modular fashion, but you can also go in and just add like maybe there's like one frame of this guy, and maybe this is like a blood decal on it, and then maybe this frame's somewhere else in the house, but there's none. It just allows for you to kind of play with them a lot more. And another tip would be if you have it set up where maybe the frame is one material ID with a material applied, and maybe the middle section is a card that has its own material ID, and you have it UV'd in such a way where you can apply photos. It just means if you have that set up and this guy has two material IDs, you can basically apply either a different wood material to it when you've duplicated the mesh, or just a different photo. So I would really try and avoid doing a lot of this kind of stuff on the actual textures itself, because it really limits kind of how you can utilize these guys in different manners. Same to cracked glass as well. I think it's really nice. It reads really well. But again, I would just be careful because you can see that some of it's kind of protruding onto like the wooden frame here. Same with this guy here. Again, I would go in and just have this set up in such a way where maybe these are just clean frames with two material IDs each. You have one for the frame, one for the photo. Everything's UV, so you can go in and swap in and out photos as you please. Maybe the photos are all in a single texture sheet to save on draw calls. And then maybe all this like broken glass is just a decal that just sits on top of it. Same with the blood stain as well. Maybe something like this kind of roughness detail on the glass happening here could be another decal that you place on top. Just really kind of nice ways to reuse assets that you have and being able to kit bash them around a map that you're creating, and also just applying all this like micro detail stuff as well. And another thing would be, for example, you could have like these frames as a separate material ID, and you could have it set up in Unreal where, maybe you want to color instance variations of these guys. So you can have like one that's like a dark brown, maybe one that's like a brighter brown, maybe one that's like just completely wood, and just another idea. And I do like that your grains flow in the right direction. Again, it's also something I always keep an eye out for when I do stuff like this, or I'm reviewing art that has a lot of these like wooden frames. Overall, they feel really nice. I do like the shape that you have going on here. Yeah, it's basically it's square, but then you have like it's almost like the photo is not properly positioned in place, so you have kind of like the visible kind of wood behind it, and just really nice little attention to detail. And again, don't forget to go in and add just some like uh, hue change in like the wood itself, or kind of just desaturate it in areas, so it's just not completely brown and brown and brown. You know, you can maybe have maybe this section up here is just a little lighter, maybe same here. You know, maybe there's just some dirt or dust gathering around the bottom part that when you place it. But overall, it's looking really, really good. And then next we have the skull, which looks awesome as well. Really, really nice detail. Again, I think these assets so far are super solid, but I think the two things they're missing, especially at a rookie's level, is just showing the wireframe, the trice count, and even just like a UV shot, you know, because it just means when you have these on your portfolio, it means studios that are reviewing it and will be able to kind of see like what way you're approaching that stuff and kind of get your thought process behind it. See maybe if there's areas that you can improve on and if they can ultimately help you get to that point. And that's usually why studios have art tests. You know, you can have a really good portfolio, but if they find it hard either before the interview or during the interview to kind of understand your knowledge technically and how you approach things, they usually offer or ask for an art test so they can kind of gauge how you approach that stuff. So again, that was a good thing to include to just give them an idea. And overall, it's looking really nice. I can see that there's enough topology to support it. There's not really any visible faceting going on, which is really good. I can read from down here, we can see that it's starting to get more low poly, but there seems to be definitely enough geometry to support the mesh without it appearing too faceting, which is important if you have like a bunch of these guys side by side or scattered around an area. You don't want the trice count to like go way over budget. But really nice. I'd say, you know, you can see here there's a lot of like hue change and coloration on the bone section, which is really nice. And it probably is just lighting, but I try and push it more here and here. Ooh, sorry. So you have kind of just a consistent flow of discoloration along the skull itself. I can see that it's really nice that you went in and kind of just darkened inside the eyes and the nose, because as I said before, like, you know, with your textures being the most expensive part of the asset, it's good to go in and just kind of add these details just to really kind of help push the quality of your textures much further. But overall, really, really, really nice work. I mean, between all three of these for a rookie level is pretty incredible work. And yeah, I look forward to seeing your future assets. And I would even go as far as to say, as you know, you have some really solid props here. You could always build out just a wee like scene on Unreal where maybe there's a table and maybe you've got all three of these guys sitting on it. Maybe some of the picture frames are hanging on a wall behind the table, you know, and on the table you have the skulls, maybe you have a candle, and maybe you have this guy as well. Maybe there's like this guy, and then maybe there's a bunch of like records that are just kind of propped up beside it. Maybe there's a cloth on the table. Just, I think that would be a really nice touch. So next we're on to this guy, which I seen this and I was quite blown away actually with the compositional lighting. And I was just like, wow, when I seen it, because it looks so good. I do believe I might have seen this cash register asset before, because I do notice a lot of the same kind of like dirt and like wear and tear detail on the front. So if that's the case, it's really awesome that this person has basically pushed this to create the rest of these props and get them situated in like either Unreal or another rendering package. But the lighting is beautiful, and the fabrics, the detail of fabrics are really high quality. Again, every time I look at rookie stuff, it just seems to be getting better and better, which is incredible. And yeah, like your passion and dedication really shines through in the art that you guys create. So I guess a few things that stand out to me on this is just more really subtle detail stuff, which would be like, you know, I think wherever these guys make contact with the surface, it would be really cool to just have some kind of like, let it be a decal or just general texture on top of this, where you're getting kind of just like this kind of slight roughness variation where there's just some dust and stuff gathering underneath these guys. Maybe the contact to them has just smudged kind of the glossiness of the wooden table. Same over here. Same around here. Just over here as well. From here. And I think it'd be really cool to see just some kind of discoloration happening on the surface of the table. So maybe it's just, you got like this really orange contrasty wood, but then maybe on the top surface it gets a little lighter. It's just kind of just general wear and tear. Maybe objects have just been placed on top, and maybe the area that it's been sitting on has kind of just over time aged and become more discolored. Or maybe this guy here has kind of just been, they've been placing these guys on the table and moving them, and there's just been kind of some subtle like edge contact with like this part of the table here. So just kind of some little breakup happening, or just even the scratches on the surface as well. Just a lot of those little things really help to tell the story, because the assets that you have on this guy, you can see that they're pretty aged and they've been used a lot, which look wonderful. But then I feel like they're also kind of on quite a clean table, which, given like how like the patchy wall, just kind of the general wear and tear and dust, I feel like it just stands out a wee bit too much. Sorry. So I would probably go in and do that. Maybe this guy's here, like these baroque details in the wood. Maybe you could make these a different material, so it's not wood. Maybe they're like a nice copper or brass, maybe along this kind of object here, sharing the same material as it. Maybe if they're not that, then maybe this ring, like this edge section, maybe is a nice brass color. I just feel like if you add just a little bit more variation to the table in terms of material, in terms of material variation, it would just kind of help it pop a bit more. And I think this asset looks really nice, and I can see there's a lot of care and love put into the material and the textures. Although I feel like because it's hidden, it's just very hard to kind of see that. So if I was working on this, I'd probably do like one shot like this, and then do another where maybe the light's kind of coming from this direction. Or maybe it's like a night scene where there's no sun, it's just general room lighting. And therefore you get to see all this stuff in more of a neutral kind of lit environment. So, you get to kind of just, again, see this guy here for how it looks. Maybe the light hitting this will get to kind of just exaggerate a lot of the dust and stuff that's gathered around kind of the ridges of this. And, this guy over here as well. These guys here, you'd think that maybe like because the person would have held the top of them a lot, maybe there's a lot of roughness variation happening there as well. So maybe there's just some general material wear and tear. So around this section here, it's more broken up rather than kind of just as clean as it looks right now. And again, the way I see it is like you have this awesome cash register, and then you have like this base, and it's heavily worn. But then when you kind of look at the other objects in scene, they're just very clean, which not necessarily is a bad thing, because I think if everything shared this level of wear, the scene you're seeing would become very noisy. So it's good that you have that balance between areas being super worn and areas not. But I think it would be really cool to see maybe some of this around this guy here a bit more. Maybe around like the bottom section, it can just be like where the edges make contact with other things. You can kind of translate that up into like the middle section. Maybe there's just some general kind of breakage and aging of the wood, so it's kind of looking more white in areas. And then just like this top fabric part, it just reads so nice. Like it's the way the material and the lighting and just the values of the material are set up. It feels so grounded and looks so good. So I'd probably go in and just maybe if I was working on this, I'd probably go in and just kind of like the middle section, kind of just go in and maybe just change the color of it, like desaturate it a wee bit, or just make it feel a bit more worn. Maybe the edges are just a bit more worn than the center points, and just a bit lighter in color. But overall, again, it's looking awesome. Like again, I'm always impressed by the quality that I'm seeing coming out, and it always just looks just amazing. And again, here you can see that like you have a lot of that kind of just wear and tear and sort of dirt happening, you know. But I would go as far as to maybe like the areas here, just kind of make them larger in terms of damage, and just sort of like maybe there's the material underneath this painted part, just showing a bit more. And then here, just kind of have just a bit more visible as well, where maybe this whole section is kind of chipped away and it's just the material that's underneath, or just maybe parts of it. But overall, it's looking wonderful. And this is another really good shot. Again, what I probably would have done if I was doing this in ZBrush, I probably would have just went in and done like a ZBrush pass where you kind of just add little dings and knocks around this part. So maybe like when the light's hitting it, you just have that kind of just. So it's not just like a flat surface with all of these details on top. There is kind of just variation happening, which would be really cool. And again, like all this is really nice as well. And I can see that there's a lot of micro detail here, just wear and tear, which looks really nice. But yeah, honestly, wonderful work. And then it's just another AO shot. So that's cool. So when you look at this, you can see that like in this surface here, it's not really visible in the other images, but you can see that this section in here is actually not flat and it's just like papery, which is really nice. But overall, again, just high quality work, which is always awesome to see. And just to refer back to the last one, I noticed we missed this. I can see that the guy did clear candles and these look wonderful. I love that you have this variant here, which is very much like dripping wax that has all dried up. I think that would be a really cool touch. If you literally had, if you had like a desk with like, or a table with cloth, maybe you have this guy on top of it, and there's like, some areas are lit, and then you got some like this variant here instead of like this clean candle wax. You have some of these guys just prop there. Again, I would avoid just using the blood decal. I'd probably just be in this in the texture, because maybe you want to have a bunch of these guys stacked somewhere in your scene, and they're all going to have this repetition of just this blood smudge of hand on them. So I again just would leave a lot of that to just using your decal in Unreal. But yeah, this is really really cool. I feel like if you literally combined all those elements into a small scene, it would be a very very strong portfolio piece. Again, it would be really good to see wireframes and just kind of how you approached it, maybe even just like your high polys as well, just to help studios and employers get a kind of a glimpse into like your thought process and how you create this stuff. So next we have this guy from Star Wars. Really cool. Definitely, I can see that this is like definitely rookie level, and it's a really good first attempt at 3D. Again, I think I'm always impressed when I see you guys taking on more complex objects and shapes and being able to just knock it out of the park. Like it's really, really, really cool. But I feel like a lot of these part areas on this just read very noisy. I feel like this kind of detail behind here, it's almost kind of like tinfoily. It's just very noisy on the normal map, and especially as this is like a brass object. You would expect this to be just a lot smoother. Maybe the edges to be a bit more rounder, so they're just not sharp. And again, just letting your roughness work, or roughness values do a lot of kind of just like the general aging and sort of like just corner details of this guy. So you can even have some dirt in the corners, or you could just have some roughness difference happening in the actual material. Same up here as well. I'd probably go in and just remove all of this micro detail from the objects entirely, and then I go in and just add coloration changes to the material itself, then follow that by roughness value changes, and then just dirt. And then it gives you the opportunity for like these larger areas to add more discoloration. It would be pretty cool. And then just like even darkening the inside, so like like the inside section is just a lot darker in the albedo than the outside, so it kind of helps to just push things a bit further. yeah, maybe even just some general edge wear as well. Maybe it's kind of contact with things on the surface, you know, over time. Maybe these guys here can be a different material entirely, just to kind of push things a bit more. Maybe this guy can be a completely different material value, maybe a different color. And I think it's very cool that you have this like variation. It looks like it's all melted from like just being heated or being in like within like an environment like a furnace or such. But the one thing I would say is like around a lot of these areas where like the surface has started to melt and degrade, you would expect a lot of coloration to happen. So just a lot of blues and purples around these areas, and even like a darker kind of studi black as well. Just something to keep in mind. Like really, really nice zebra sculpt. It looks really, really cool. I would probably avoid like these kind of ridgy details. It feels very much like I'd see a lot of these details if you were to like take a file and start like knocking out wood chunks out of wood. You would get kind of like this ridgy kind of noise happening. But because this is metal, it would just sort of like bubble and kind of just become more blobby. So like it would be more kind of aligned with this guy here and this here, just more kind of looking like that rather than like this ridgy kind of just consistent like chipped detail. I can see that this is all done in ZBrush, so the guy probably used a trim brush for this, which is good. But I'd probably use the trim brush and then I go in with the one of the down standard and just go in and just start kind of, cutting into a bit more and smoothing it out so it looks more bloody. Yeah, otherwise definitely on the right track. It's definitely looking really, really good. Again, I can see because all this when I look at this, I can see that the person has basically used smoothing in ZBrush for that area. And if I was working on this, I would probably, I can see a lot of this micro detail is in the actual high poly mesh itself. So, like, you have the right idea here because this gives you this kind of natural bubbling that would happen on like if it started to melt. But I would carry this more around the mesh itself and kind of just pull back on a lot of this micro detail because I just feel like again, when you do your bakes to from your high poly mesh, it will start to get very, very noisy. But overall, it's looking really good. Definitely keep up the good work. So next we have Humanoid by Kashmir Hapala. Really cool. I've seen in the wireframe that this is very much a sub-D mesh, which is wonderful. Although a few things to point out. We can see that the arms and the body and the front torso section are very much symmetrical. So that allows you like the opportunity to go in and just like push the kind of details in this a bit further and then just symmetrically flip it over to the other side. And because we're dealing with more like Android mech objects here, I would probably take this into ZBrush. If this was like a high poly, I'd duplicate it or like duplicate the parts I want to work on and bring them into ZBrush. I'd go in and start kind of just doing more like panel kind of sculpts in ZBrush around these areas. And just to really push things just a wee bit further. I know it very much reads very clean and it looks really, really good in itself, but I just feel like just a little bit more attention would just really kind of push things a bit more in the details. Again, if I was working on this, I'd probably push like these like sharp edges. I'd probably inflate them just a wee bit more so they just read a lot. Like from this distance, they would read a lot more chamfered. Because right now they are quite sharp. Again, if this is the textured version, don't be afraid to go in and just add some discoloration to the actual like the plastic paneling because you would think over a while plastic will start to age and morph from kind of a white to kind of like a creamy yellow. But overall, I mean, again, for a rookie level artist, this is pretty awesome. Like, it's really, really good work. And again, I just get blown away by just the sheer talent and hard work that you guys put into this stuff. because it's very clean, there's definitely a lot more opportunity to add more graphic paneling. You know, you could have some down here where maybe there's like an area on here that person has to press open this front torso section. Maybe there's like just kind of like signage on the hand that says like, "Hey, to rotate it this way to take it off," or just general like warning labels. So all that stuff would be really cool. Um, you know, maybe this is composed of multiple you know, objects that you can buy on their own rather than it being like a whole cohesive Android that you purchase. So you could have like maybe the arms are just very much from like one kind of provider, maybe the torsos from another, and each of them just have their own kind of like logo and labeling to them. I think that would be a really cool touch. Or maybe one down here on the side of the helmet, you know, maybe one on top area of the visor. And then even on the back section here, maybe there's a panel here where the person can access it. Maybe he has to implement a chip. Maybe again, there's just some warning signs and stuff up there. I do like that you have like kind of this glow happening here. I think that looks really cool. You know, maybe you could push a little bit more of that on the front sections. Maybe like these parts here light up. You know, maybe there's some lighting coming from underneath this part and it's kind of glowing down onto the rest of the body. I think that would look pretty cool. But overall, it's looking awesome, and I can see that you've really translated a lot of that stuff over here where you have like the caution sign, you know, you have the branding of the company that made maybe this like hydraulic section. You know, you can see a lot more of that happening down here. So I feel like if you just kind of carry that on to just more elements of it, it would look really, really cool. Maybe you have shots of it where there's like color variants. So like here's the white version, and here's like blue and red version. Maybe they come with multiple heads, and maybe the visor and the eyes come in different color variations. Just a lot of that little stuff just would really kind of help to just sell it much more. I mean, like the asset itself is awesome, but I feel like just including those would just really show a lot more variation. And as I say here, we can see the low poly or the high poly mesh with all the topology. And I think it's always good when you're starting this stuff to always do it as sub D as you can. And then don't be afraid then to go into ZBrush and add more detail or boolean out shapes and areas that you need to. This just means that if you need to do those changes and you need to go back to the original high poly, that you still have that mesh. You don't have to like remodel it or just avoid any of that kind of mistakes. And then another tip would be if you're using Max, never collapse your modifier stack. Like always keep it open, keep everything visible in it. So it just means if you have to jump back 2 or 3 steps, you're able to do that as well. Because I know sometimes it's very easy to model out a part and be like, yeah, done, right click, editable poly, and you move on. And then maybe that person wants changes, or the client wants changes, and then you're just like, oh, crap. So it's just something to keep in mind. But overall, again, solid work. Sorry, I'm still very much still very much under the weather. So last we got this environment scene, and again, composition is really nice, lighting is really nice. It's looking super solid. I guess a few things stand out to me is very much. I feel like at this distance, I can see that there is some like wooden plank here or paneling going on here on the sides, but I feel like because the camera's so far from it, it's very it's not the easiest thing to read. So I'd probably push that geometry a bit more. If it's just using like a flat texture right now, I'd probably convert this into geo instead, so you kind of have that kind of light hitting those like crevice areas and kind of reflecting shadows. Maybe you have areas where maybe there's just parts of it coming off from like the weather. You know, I feel like because it's very snowy, like these all feel very clean and not really cold. So you could go in and maybe just add some like snow up these guys here. We can see that there's like trails, like cold wind trails coming in. So maybe that's blowing onto them. Maybe you have some ice forming on these guys here, and there's just some general kind of hanging like icicles and stuff. I mean, when you look at the window, you can kind of see that detail. You can see the environment reflecting off it, but you can also see that it does look a lot colder. And what I probably would do if I was working on this, like, would add just some frost around kind of the edges. Maybe because there's snow in the bottom section, there's not really much happening up here. So I'd probably go in and add some snow sitting on the top, just kind of hanging over it. Maybe there's parts that's broken, maybe it's kind of gathered because it's fell. Again, just around here, just opportunity to go in and kind of just really kind of set dress these guys with all snow and ice. Maybe there's a logo on the side of it. Maybe these are like buildings like built by a company that produce these for like holiday vacations or just portable homes out in like a very like foreign um, planet somewhere. So you got like these color variations, but then here maybe you have like a logo for the company. Um, Maybe down here because we can see that it's very much like icy water. You can see there's an old boat. Maybe there's a walkway kind of down to like a section like where the person who owns this can kind of like go down and get their boat or do other things. Um, maybe one thing to think was like, okay, well maybe how do these guys get water? What is their like sewage system like? So maybe you could have some stuff coming out going underneath the ice for that. Maybe there's some like visible holes in the ice and just like piping coming out. Overall, it's looking really good though. I feel like the ice is just very clean, so I'd probably add some snow, like around. Maybe there's more just gathering in areas. Maybe there's kind of like a blend of snow over the ice. Maybe just different hues of color. So maybe the ice is more blue in other areas and just a lot whiter in others. I like that you do have the kind of snow forming on the trees. So I feel like because of this and because of how snowy the rest of the environment is, I just feel like these guys just stand out very clean, almost like how you would see them if it was like a summer's day. So definitely worthwhile just revisiting those and just giving them a lot more love and attention and just providing like that extra touch of snow and ice on them. Maybe over here you could have another, you have an old boat here, maybe it's just starting to freeze over, but then maybe there could be a section here where maybe this is like a whole waterway and it's just open. And maybe the ice isn't actually formed the entire way over. Maybe it's just areas that have not made contact with any vehicles that kind of go along this part. Maybe there's just like a warning sign up for like the ice itself, or maybe like there's landmines or just anything, or maybe even in the background just some like kind of satellite dishes. Be really cool. And if this is like on a different planet instead of Earth, maybe you could have like in the skybox, you could have it just kind of like a more interesting kind of thing where there's like another planet behind this planet kind of coming through. I mean, it's definitely a really good start, and I feel like the scene has so much potential. And I just feel like with a lot of these little things, it adds a lot more storytelling to it, and it also just kind of really helps to just marry things together when there's like snow on top of the buildings, snow around the bottom. Sorry, snow around the bottom. So like where it meets contact with the ice, like these poles, like there's just snow gathering, so it kind of hides that natural scene that's happening. I'll probably go in and do the same here for like these sections, just go in and paint a lot of that in around the edges. There's just things are just marrying much better together, so you're not getting any real like super visible seams between like surfaces of touch. As you do have here, is basically this is a really good example where you kind of have like this icy snow and then it's hitting this rock and it has like snow gathering around the bottom. But yeah, honestly, really, really good work. And again, as always, I'm blown away by what I see here, and I'm very excited for what you guys do next. Well, I think this wraps up today's stream. I was kind of hoping to hit like a 30-minute marker for this one. But again, next week we're going to be kicking off on Discord. I'll be posting on Monday early Monday for that. And I'm really excited. And I think it's going to definitely change things and make things a lot more interesting. And again, I'll be getting other pros in to have a chat with us. And it'll be almost like a live stream / hangout between professionals in the industry, people training to get into it. And I feel like it'll be so much more insightful for you guys being able to, you know, check out your work in real time and have you guys ask questions in real time, and just really kind of, a conversation that could start about this portfolio piece could go into how we got into the industry, or maybe how we learned 3ds Max, or just a lot of other stuff, which I feel would be so helpful. um but yeah, thanks so much again for your time, and I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your Thursday. And yeah, I look forward to the new kind of push forward next week. All right, have a wonderful rest of the day.